namaskar, and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Today, we're going to talk about the history of temple destruction in India, and how it has affected and why it was done, and how it has affected the identity of billions of Hindus across the world. We are also going to touch upon some other relevant topics as the talk progresses. Like you all know, that our talks are not scripted. Uh, Coming back to, we have a great person, great friend, author, commentator, and widely acclaimed in India, Sri Sandeep Singh. So without
Namaste.
delay, let us welcome Sandeep ji. Namaskar, Sandeep ji. So, so Sandeep ji, so first of all, before we start off, very few people know that so many temples were destroyed. What is the approximate number?
I guess it will run in a few crores if we calculate from what time. So I'll give you just small example. From one state, Andhra Pradesh, beginning from 2015, year-wise data. 2015, 219 temples destroyed. 2016, 332 temples destroyed. 2017, 318 temples destroyed. 2018, 267 temples destroyed. 2019, 305 temples destroyed. 220, 228 temples destroyed. So total in 6 years, 1,740 temples have been destroyed. So on an average, 290 temples per year. It is like on an industrial scale. If you remove the holidays, every working day, one temple is being destroyed. And you will be shocked, beginning this new year, 2021, in Andhra Pradesh, what record I have is 6 temples have been destroyed. Ramtirth Temple, Sita Ram Temple, Ketu Temple, Vigneshwara Temple in Rajmundri, Ganesh Temple in Chief Minister's own constituency. So, 6 temples I have already have the record, and we are on the 11th of January. So that one temple per day, that spree is still going on. So that's the rate of destruction of temple in one state in India.
So, what is the insecurity? Why these temples are getting destroyed?
Okay, so if there is no temple, because temple represents Hinduism, and it's important part for any Hindu to visit the temple. So if there is no temple, it's easier. Where will you go to pray? And then if you look what they are doing, missionaries in India, they have almost made their Jesus and Mary into Indian gods. They wear saffron, Gerua Vastra. Uh, they have converted Hanuman Chalisa into Yashu Chalisa. They use flowers. So all things that they abuse Hindus for idol worship, they have started doing it. Though we worship murtis, and there is a big difference between idol and murti. Idol is a stone thing. You don't pran pratishtha, and then it becomes a murti. So they don't understand it, and that is the one way of fooling people, that how they drag them to the church, and slowly they'll convert them. So, and one of the ministers is on record that saying that 25 odd percent or people are already converted to Christianity. So there's a state-backed conversion mafia going on in Andhra Pradesh.
This is very astonishing. I think these numbers, even I was not aware of, and my eyes are just
And these
now.
numbers are from the press conference of Director General of Police D. Gautam Sawang.
Wow, my God.
So from the newspapers, you can just search it on the web and you will have these
And that
numbers.
is for the Andhra Pradesh.
Only one state,
Only one state. Yeah.
Andhra Pradesh.
So the deep insecurity of these missionaries. See, Sanatan Dharma, Hinduism is such an open culture. Why there is so much deep insecurity? What is the reason for that?
I guess there is no substance in their own religion which they follow. And that's evident that research survey after survey shows in West people are giving up Christianity. So they know there is no content in that. So if you don't have a content, what happens in a debate? If you don't have a content, you get aggressive, abusive, and then you'll resort to violence. So if you don't have a substance, this happens, and this is what is happening there also.
Yeah, it's astonishing that because so much of misinformation is being spread, and the most of these missionaries, they follow a policy of inculturation.
Yeah,
they adopt the policies of the local culture, customs, distort them, and then present themselves. This is going on for a long time.
correct.
In America, I wrote a book called The Hindu Bible, which is just the Bhagavad Gita.
Uh-huh.
And Bhagavad Gita is for, but Americans, it's difficult to pronounce Bhagavad Gita. It's like I've
Mm.
been preaching here Bhagavad Gita for almost 20 years, so it's difficult for them to say. So I wrote a Gita, simple Gita translation called the Hindu Bible. The biggest opposition I faced from Hindus.
Yeah.
Why did you change the name of Gita? Even Dr. Swami came in my support,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that is only for Americans. So I had to write another version for Hindus called the Gita, just so that. So why is this mentality of putting your own people down again and again? Because they are doing inculturation, but we cannot do inculturation. Why?
See, the problem is that to get everybody on the same platform or same level of understanding, and the same problem remains in other religion also, like Europe, in Christianity or Islam. But if you notice what happens there, that you are indoctrinated every once every week. Every for them it's a 5 times a day, but at least on a Friday afternoon there is a long lecture. On a Sunday there is a long lecture for the Christians. But Hindus, we don't have that understanding, and that so we can't think of a strategic point of view everybody, so our strategic level of understanding is very low, uh, and which is for quite some time, I guess, since Chanakya's time. We have here and there few odd people, and now as a country we see there is some strategic thinking in our foreign policy or defense. Otherwise, overall we have stopped thinking strategically, so that is a reason out of that. So we need to do it. You will find a position, but that's what is important, is that we explain in details that why we are doing it. You may not get 100% support, but still few people will be aware of that why you are doing it.
See, the one of the great point you said, because the traditional Vedic culture or Hindu culture has in the morning, it's a custom since Mahabharata or before Mahabharata time, morning for Srimad Bhagavatam, evening for Bhagavad Gita. That has been the culture. And people, very few people will refute it, because, and also the Prabhat Feri, very common concept. A group of citizens in the local
Correct.
community take kartal, mridanga, dholak, whatever they have, and go out in the streets chanting Ram's names. That is a very common culture. And evening is called Sandhya Feri. In Hindi called Sindha Feri, in Marathi is a different thing. But still, it's the same thing going on. Morning, evening, and afternoon, there is a Sandhya again. So
Hmm.
we still have the system, but somehow I don't know what impression they got, that because whenever there is a Bhagavatam class going on, in America we run everydaychant.com. There's a morning and evening, morning Bhagavatam, evening Bhagavad Gita. You'll find very few people there. Very few people. It's going on for 15 years. But dedicated people are also there, and I congratulate them for coming. Many of the people on the call today are there. So where is this lost? It's already part of the Vedic culture, Hindu culture.
See, we'll have to make people understand that why it is important, in modern terms. Permit me, I'll give you a couple of examples. A very small example, like, that throwing of coins in river. And it was called, andhvishwas, superstition, and people will laugh at it. And there was a time when even I have laughed at it, and some point of time even I have thrown coins. And after I studied, then I realized that, so every ritual that in India you do, there is a spiritual part in it, but there is a economic and scientific part in it as well. So where is the science comes in this throwing of coins? So if you remember, all the coins initially that they were made were out of gold, and then silver, and then bronze, zinc, and now later we have moved to aluminum, plastic, and all. But if you notice, gold and silver have the properties to clean the water. Even if you look at the modern day water purifier, look at any water purifier ad, they will be talking about there is a silver in it which cleans the water. So the whole idea was that if you're visiting a spiritual place, and all spiritual places are near a river, lake, or a sea, most of them, or a pond. So whatever contain the water pollution that has happened because of your visit, you throw some coins to purify it. So it was such a beautiful, nicely weaved concept in it, and we couldn't understand it. and we started making it fun of it. So now if you look, people understand that there is a music therapy. The science is proving it. Now you'll have to understand that what it means, that when you read a prayer, how does it frequency or it emits, and so we need to measure it on a scientific scale and then present it to current generation, and they will accept it.
Exactly. I think what is missing is, see, when Americans, and many of the Americans are watching right now, see, Americans view Indians as very intelligent. That's a general impression, that they are known as smart people. And so uh, when we complain, Hindus complain this is happening. So they are doubtful that if you're intelligent, why not making a solution to it? If you consider yourself intelligent, so and you said it rightly, that many of the things are passed on as superstitious or mythology. So you have less faith in that. We've been told by that. But another question rises: where is the independence? You are an independent nation, sovereign nation, and why can't you stop it? Don't say the intelligent people are known to make solutions, not to just repeat the problems. So where do you think the psyche is lacking now?
Okay. See, this is a question which I have also gone through myself and have been asked many times. But if you look, when you are looking at India and comparing with other nations, we'll have to look at it slightly differently. We are now 10,000-year-old civilization or maybe older. Other civilizations are just 1,500 year around. If you plot in a graph, they might come as a dot, or maybe small dash kind of thing, nothing more. So if something has survived for so long, it is bound to get corroded, and we didn't have time to repair it from last 300-400 years. We have been defending one attack after the other, and now if you look, that process is on, and I believe lot more people are working on these issues, lot more people are talking about it, lot more people are interested in it. So I'm sure if you see, I'll tell you, when I started, when I was in college and all, we didn't know where to look for these things. Today I go and teach such subjects in schools and colleges. So the change is happening. uh, we have to awaken the youth society, 130 or say 100 crore of Hindus, and it will take some time, but I think we are on a right path. If you look the journey, we couldn't have think of doing a show where I could talk about such things, few years back. So we have moved from there to here. That itself shows that as a society we are working towards it. You just talked about a 19-year-old Ashok. Now, as a 19-year-old Sandeep couldn't have done this, but today a 19-year-old Ashok is doing it. That's it itself is a huge change. It took a 39-year-old Sandeep to understand all this. Today, 19-year-old Ashok is understanding it, and tomorrow, 9-year-old Geeta or Sita will be doing it. So we are on a perfect track, I think another decade or so will be back with all our glory.
You're making me feel very old. So,
Sorry about that.
so, so coming back to this point, which you said, the awakening is happening. Just to give a history to the viewers as well, to share the history. In Bangladesh and Kashmir, the spread of one of the Abrahamic faiths happened, Islam happened, by opening of multiple mosques, and that is continuing till date, where more and more mosques are opened so that people get a chance locally to go there. Adi Sankaracharya in India established Hanuman or Ganesh Mandir in every single village. That was his direction, and therefore you'll find Hanuman or Ganesh Mandir in every village of India, at least one. The problem is that due to the propaganda of the left or the communists, the people were made to believe that that is all superstition and the science is supreme, whereas every aspect of Vedic or Hindu culture is a science in itself, like offering water to Surya in the morning, or waiting for the moonrise, as observing Ekadashi. These are all scientific things because the body needs a rest. One day, at least 2 days in a month, the body is like a machine continuously working. Now, the science aspect of the Vedic culture, so was first of all, the science and the Vedic culture or Hindu culture are inseparable. They are part of one. Whereas in the Western theology or Western thought process, science is different than the book, because the book is dogmatic. Book has nothing. So therefore, the science is treated independently. But for Hindus, it's not so, because science is part of their culture. And so they don't have to be scientific. In Western culture, if you want scientific, then you have to reject the book. It's very common. Most of the scientists don't follow the book. They're agnostic. And it's same in Islamic culture as well, same Judaism culture also. That's why you have the big problem in those countries where the scientists are considered as rebels. But in India, the rishis are the scientists, munis are the scientists. So, please elaborate on this, that how come this either can be rectified, or what is your observation on this, sir?
Okay, I'll give you two examples. One from maths. So if you look at the history of maths, there are two world wars. So there are two maths war also. The first maths war was fought for 400 years by European Church, because Church couldn't accept a concept like zero. If you look at it, zero, it's a deeply philosophical concept, whether it's empty or it encompasses everything. And in India, the oldest inscription of zero is found in a temple in Gwalior. So actually, that defines how different we are, and are for Hindu dharma, science and dharma are together, and then maths for two, which is more interesting. The European Church again took 150 years to accept something called integral calculus, which originated in which is known more as a Kerala school of mathematics. So they couldn't accept something called integral calculus, which encompasses basically something from zero to infinity, and you can do a calculation. So that is how far away they are from maths. And the story of calendar is known. They came to India to copy it, so their calendar was false. So the current calendar is something which they copied from the Brahmins from Tamil Nadu, and they are a documented history. And the second example I'll give you, which is something more hilarious, there is a story which says that Moon married the 27 daughters of King Daksha. Now, it looks very hilarious. But if you just go on the internet, you will find a lecture by Raj Vedam, who was a professor, and he's worked on it. And it basically says that the sky, our ancestors divided, the rishis and munis divided the sky into 27 constellations. And the way the moon moves from one to other, so it is said there are 27 wives. That's how he's moving with one wife at a time. So, you can't explain astronomy to a common man. But the moment you put it as a story form, uh, it's known to everybody, and it becomes a very normal thing. So, and our calendar is perfect, because the European calendar, the Christian calendar was solar, the Islamic calendar was lunar. Our calendar is a mix of both solar and lunar, and that's why it's more perfect. So we have some festivals following solar and some following lunar, and that's where we are so perfect in our calculations, and our understanding of astronomy was so beautiful. We don't appreciate a calendar like a panchang. Before the NASA and all build huge telescope, they couldn't give the exact date and time of when will the Amavasya and Purnima will happen, the waning and waxing of moon. But our panchangs have been giving predicting those date, not only date, but going beyond the second and giving exact times. So these are the couple of examples, and we can have a whole session on that. So the science is ingrained in our dharma very much.
So one of the things is, like, when we start, the world over is starting to accept the importance of moon big time. There is a I can tell you, there is a moon watch, full moon watch in San Diego, where people climb up the hills and watch the moon rise, and they respectfully or something, whatever, the beauty of the moon or whatever it is. But there is a moon watch going on, and there is a sun watch going on. There's a group right now climbing up the hills to watch the sunrise right now. The fascination is coming back. The the attraction to Puranic stories in America is also increasing. And I'm not saying with just because I deal with these people on a daily basis for last 20 years. So I know this is going on. So they want to accept Puranas as it is. They don't want to put any interpretation to that. But for Indians, for Hindus, you have to give a scientific explanation, because somebody has told them that you have to doubt everything, except
Yes.
especially Puranic literatures, especially Vedas, especially anything which Indian gurus have told. In last 20, so So this supposition of, see, when as soon as you bring a rationality to this thing, that this is nothing but this, then automatically minimizes it. Now people will naturally will not believe in that, will say, okay, we'll believe in in the, like I said, the separation of science and the dogma is not applicable to Vedic culture. For us, Moon Soma did marry 27 daughters of Daksha. Very common, for us. So when you like interplace that or give an interpretation, then automatically loses relevance. What do you think on that?
See, I believe that Hindu mind is so evolved that it can accept many things what we might see contradiction in today's world. Because when you're following a religion of book, then you can't live in duality. For us, Shiv is perfect, Vishnu is perfect, Brahma is perfect, uh, Lakshmi is perfect, Saraswati is perfect, Shakti is perfect. So each one is perfect, and we are happy with all of them. So the way we are born and brought up, the way the whole culture is built up, we can easily live with duality, which is a problem in the West and even in Islam, because they have to follow a book. If it's not there, it is wrong. So we are grown in a very different atmosphere, so we can live with this duality very easily. We know that this is the story and this is the science, and if there is economic angle to it, so this is the economic angle to it. So I'll put it very differently. People get confused often. So we play different roles in a day. In office you might be a senior boss, you might be the topmost boss. When you're going in a train back home, you are just common another passenger. You reach home, then you play a different role of a father. You might be a son, you might be a brother. So we have been playing all of it perfectly for so long, so we don't have a problem. So the family system actually teaches you. Slightly digressing, but I'll give you something very interesting example. I was teaching in an MBA college last week only, and this point was brought to me by a student. I was talking about the family concept, and then he said, "Yes, sir. Maybe that is why in the West there is a counselor for everything. In India, a counselor concept is something very new." And to give an example, which college to take admission in, you will have your uncle, aunties, neighbors, up and down, chacha, chachi, friends guiding you where to go. In West, you will land up with a counselor to guide you. So so the family helps you live with contradictions or duality or whatever you call multiple understanding of the same subject. So the same lady could be Mausi for somebody, could be Mami for somebody, could be Didi for someone, and could be Chachi for someone else. And we live all this identity happily.
Very well put it, because the Indian, that's what I say, that it's a very balanced culture. So it's like we can take the dichotomy very easily, and we can harmonize in ourselves. That's the beauty of the taking birth in Bharatvarsh. That is the beauty of it,
Correct.
which many Indians don't believe in that. And for an American, that's a big problem also. So I have seen many of my students are PhD in law, in science, and they, as soon as they get in touch with yoga and spirituality, they leave that, and
Hmm.
so the entire education is wasted. and
Yeah,
and where I have to tell them, no, 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 stay wherever sthane sthita shubhiman tanuan manovin, wherever you are situated, be there. You can practice yoga there also. That is my struggle with the Western audience, actually, because I, they will leave everything and go to Rishikesh.
correct.
And uh, and it's good in a way, that because they're very serious about spirituality and they go to Rishikesh. But the con side is that they miss out the balanced life, which is they could have done the same thing while living there. But for an Indian brain, it's very easy. That also brings to another point, that the the Hindu brain, now when you put against the Western brain, which is brought in black and white in dogmatic way, the Hindu brain accepts everything without opposing anything. Whereas in the West, there is a saying, the duck which gets the quacks the loudest gets the cracker. Now, they accept everything, they harmonize everything. But in Western mind is not harmonizing anything. Its exclusivity is the hallmark of them. For Indians, inclusivity is a hallmark. So how do you contrast that to, like, what is the solution to change that mindset of Hindus? Because when they're dealing with the Western, they don't understand. That guy is thinking from one track. And so you may be very friendly. You may open your house for dinner, lunch, breakfast, everything. But that man has not changed his viewpoint. He's still there to convert you.
So since you got the example of dinner and home, I'll give the example from there only. So what happens if you go to eat in a or eat in a Western? If you eat Western food, if you look, so how does the food come in a restaurant? Uh, and if you're having a la carte, so first your starter will come, then the main course will come, and then the dessert will come. So there is a sequence to it. For them, that's understanding. And for Hindus, a thali will come, everything at one go. And some will start maybe with a lassi, some will start with a dessert, some will start with a chapati, and it will have a laddu and the lassi in between. So how you deal with things is represented in your food also, and that is where we can accept everything so easily. And for them, it becomes a sequential. And I'll tell you where does it come from. They have been taught Maslow's law from centuries. And which says is that first I need is security, food, then security, and the last, then love, and then the last thing I need is self-respect. And India is sponge coach. For us, everything comes together. आप किसी को फेंक के खाना देंगे तो he is not going to eat it if you throw a food and give it. It has to be given with respect. People might make fun, but a driver or a house help is called a uncle or a bhaiya or a mausi. Because the respect has to come. It doesn't come in sequence. I need food security and then respect. So when you're talking to anybody, you talk to them with respect. So for West, it's very difficult to understand because they have seen always a class system. They might blame us on caste, but which was not there. It has been a creation the way we see it today of British imperialism, and again there are documentary evidence to it. So our society is very different, and very difficult to point out one thing. It's everything encompasses, how you perform everything. If you look at any puja, everybody is a rule. If you look as a marriage function in a society, in a family, there's a role for a potter, there is a role for a weaver, there is a role for a barber. So everybody comes together in everything. So invitation has to be taken by a barber, and otherwise it won't be accepted even in rural areas or semi-rural areas. So everybody has an important role to play in the society, and there is a very clear-cut role definition which is missing in the West. And for them, it will take time to understand. And the beginning point could be the food. If you can make them understand why it's important to have sweet whenever you want and not in the end.
Now, coming back to the point, just remember by thali that thali has different sections, and
Yeah.
and they have, so when you put in a flat plate, then everything overflows, everything mixes, taste mix. So
Correct.
you brought an important point. The fun of life is in variety, not in just one thing.
Yeah, and again, it looks we have if you go, we have we'll say traditionally we have 12 seasons. For them it's summer, rainy, winter, and that's it, or maybe spring for a small period of time. They will not be able to connect what is Vasant Ritu, and to experience that you'll have to come to India, because in Europe you can't experience Vasant Ritu. And so, and if you don't understand Vasant Ritu, you don't understand Holi. For you, then it's a wastage of water. So so that whole thing, they'll have to understand Indians, they'll have to visit India, because the way nature has made India, and that is why we said, as you said some time back, it's a Punya Bhumi. Nobody sees 12 weathers. They can't know what is Vasant Ritu and the fun of it. And
yes, please go ahead.
the difference between Sawan and Ashad, for them it's a rainy season. For it's a two very different things.
Sometimes they say that they congratulate me that I moved from East Coast to West Coast for the good weather. I said, no Indian will move for the good weather. The good weather is best in India.
Yeah.
If you're in India, then you are living in almost like air-conditioned environment throughout the year. It's not too hot, and there are seasons also. Correct. People come to US for only one reason, that is for money, and that's it. If it was good weather and good food, then nobody will leave India just for good weather.
Yes.
And good food. Now, coming back to, for Americans to move to India, or to visit India, the biggest attraction for them is the Indian culture. And where in India, they're destroying the temples, which are the basis of Indian culture.
Correct.
And Americans are not attracted to India because India has sent a spaceship to moon, or created a nuclear weapon, create a nuclear submarine or any scientific invention because they are way ahead of India. India is always copying them. But Americans are interested to come to India, or Europeans also, because of yoga, meditation, Ayurveda. This is what they're attracted towards. So if they are giving so much importance to India, and despite stealing all the scriptures from India and making their own economy work, why the Indians don't value that, don't understand this aspect? You not see an American coming to Bombay to see how beautiful Bombay is. Bombay is a very, you know how the city is. They are coming to Rishikesh, they're coming to Varanasi, they're coming to places which may look very dirty to Indians. For Indians, Varanasi may be very backward. But Americans love it. They love the cows on the street. They love the filth on the Manikarnika Ghat. They love it.
Correct.
They go to Vrindavan and they move without shoes. Why Indians are not giving importance to their own places?
See, again, I'll say is that, this has happened over last 200 years when the Renaissance, Brahmo Samaj, and all those kind of people, and then we had the liberals saying that, this is what is new and happening. And the good part is that, like, people like you who have gone there and they realize the value and talking about it. And we have more number of people in India who are realizing this value of the importance of culture, and they're talking about it. So this change will happen because, I guess I'd given examples earlier also. Like, we know how good Sanskrit as a language is for learning, for application, for the growth of mind. But when British started offering the modern medical education system in India, there were two kind of protests in Calcutta. One protest was led by Muslims. They were demanding that the education must be in Urdu. The other protest was led by so-called Raja Ram Mohan Rai, and he demanded that the instruction must not be in Sanskrit but must be in English. So, those were the steps that how we started chiseling away our culture and making it for people to look down upon. But thankfully, even then, there were people like Vivekananda or Aurobindo who kept talking about Indian culture, or Bal Gangadhar Tilak. So there has been never been a stop of it. Otherwise, wherever if you look, Europeans went, they killed the original inhabitants. It didn't happen in India. So it's not that Indians nobody resisted, or we can still look back to our root. Africans were not wiped out, but they don't know what their original root is. They can't think beyond 50 years what was culture or society was. And we can make a temple like the way we used to build 1,000 years back. And Swaminarayan temples are built in Europe and America just the way 1,000 years back Indians were building it, without using a cement or a steel. So we are a living civilization, and yes, as I said, 4,000-year-old civilization can take a hit here and there, but it will heal itself.
The story of a
And we are in
white,
that process.
is a story of a
Sorry?
dead elephant, a story of a dead elephant or a white elephant. Even when it is dead, it is still valuable.
It's valuable, and we are not dead.
We are
As
not
I
dead.
said, we are living civilization, and we know how to build our temples the way we used to build 1,000 years back, and we're still building it. So
No, I
where
think
will
that
we around?
that shows a very positive light. One of the things that you mentioned, and that will be the last question in this series, I would like come back now. You have opened a Pandora box today. So, uh, so the one of the last questions is that the education system in India, and is the way it has been designed, it just promotes mythology. It doesn't promote. So mythology is a negative word many Indians do not know. It's like it's meant to undermine Vedic culture straight away. It was
Yes, well
invented
said.
in 1878. Mythology means science of fake, science of imagination, and it was invented against Ramayana and Mahabharata, actually,
Yes,
because Mahabharata had so many proofs that the British were scared that the Indians learned Mahabharata, they'll overthrow them immediately, and never the division
yes,
would have happened.
you said it.
So, that's why I invented the term mythology. The point is that unless we respect our own heritage, how will you counter somebody else who is working against you? So what do you think people in general should do, including Americans who are watching? If you love Indian culture, you need to work to protect Indian culture. So what should we do to change this mindset?
Exactly. We are doing one of the things that we are talking about it, and we are trying to take it out to people across the world. And we need to do it more of this in different fields. And I'm glad that today there are a lot of people who are doing it. if you look across. And the good part is that there is a set of people who are researching on it. There is a set of people who are writing about it. There are a set of people like you who are giving us platform to talk about it. So all of it is happening. We need to do it more, and we'll have to explore more opportunities like make movies, make TV serials if required. There are people who are writing fiction, non-fiction, both on this aspect. So we are at it, and we need to continue doing, taking modern tools of communication, every possible tool, and make it present it to people in different format. Like what I just told you, somebody might like it in form of a painting, or might like it in the form of a film. So that is the next step. Might be looking forward to a complete science based movie on Indian thinking, Hindu thinking, Vedic thinking.
So now brings me to the next point, and we'll maybe cover it in the next show. The most of the media platforms are controlled by anti-Hindu forces, to be very clear,
Yes. Yeah.
and including the platform which you're talking about. Sometimes it's also
Correct.
controlled by them. Now, how will the content, because there is no, see, China has their own platform, Russia has their own platform, Japan has their own platform, most of the European countries have their own platform, and they regularly put heavy taxes on these American platforms. Now, when did India will create their own platform to, so that the Indian thought point viewpoint comes out?
Yeah. So I my understanding is that a few people are working on it. Jio had announced something and it's lying low. Joe has announced something and they are working at it. So I believe the work is on, and I'm sure in a matter of time there will be people who will be interested in this. And I also look at is that if we can create sufficient noise, even some of those European or American investors, if they think that they can make money out of it, they will change the ideology. So the capitalist people move with wherever they can make the money, so if they'll see there are enough market for this, they can make money out of it. They will suddenly start making. If you look in case of India, there were not many nationalist movies were being built 10 years back. If you compare to what we have seen in last 10 years or 5 years, so suddenly people see that there is a market for it, and so people are building it. So you couldn't have think of a movie on Lakshmi Bai or Peshwa, Bajirao Peshwa, those kind of movie we couldn't think of, and suddenly there is a set of people who have started making movies like this, and these are successful movies, good movies, so more people will follow.
If you carefully observe these movies, in between they put in lines which again debunk what they're doing. So they may be showing what Rani Lakshmi Bai, but or some great leader of India. For Hindus, the name will be Hindus, but one or two lines will be there. Again, the mythology is spreading. It's like the
Correct.
subtle way.
So parallelly, I guess social media does that job, and they expose them perfectly. So the reader or the whoever is watching it, the viewer knows what is the fact and what is not. So I'll give a small example, just another minute maybe. So in a lot of schools in India, I have a first-hand experience from that. I'm talking school of 5, 6, 7, and they start teaching the Mughal history. Today, nowadays, lot of students stand up and ask, Akbar was illiterate. Why are you calling him great? And it becomes really difficult for the teacher when she's teaching in a school to class 5, 6, 7 student whom you are going teaching that you must study, and at the same time you are calling an illiterate great. And that's where then the teachers have started saying, yes, what you are saying is true. So in the books, when in the exam, if it comes, you write like this, but what we are saying is true, he was not great. So the next generation has taken up the onus. So we just need to create information, and the next generation will solve it.
Thank you so much, Sandeep ji. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. You have such a wealth of knowledge and realizations.
Pleasure.
Uh,
Yeah. Thanks for giving me a chance.
for viewers who are watching it, you can also see the same video sometime next week on the YouTube. Do comment on it and share it widely. So thank you all for a valuable time in the morning. Namaskar. Thank you.
Namaskar.